our next speaker, Richard and I, and Nick, Matt, we met at the NPCC conference in May, and we'll very soon understand the link between what it's got to offer and the recovery industry. So our next speaker joined the MIB enforcement team after 30 years experience in law enforcement in the West Midlands. During that time, he led teams across all sorts of portfolios, traffic and air operations policing, West Midlands casualty reduction team, the finishing and tactical firearms commander in Birmingham area. He demonstrates a real passion for protecting people from harm and capitalising on policing experience. He's keen in motorsports, so if there are any free tickets, we're all pre-going. Over here, please. But no further ado, we welcome Paul Farley. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. It's cool, which is fantastic. It's the shift before lunch, folks, so I will try and canter through my presentation as quickly as possible, but thanks first to Richard, Derek, Prof, who we only met literally a few months ago, invited us here today, but also to you and your members, because there are so many vehicles recovered day in, day out for uninsured driving on the road by yourselves. 134,000 a year, 1 every 3.5 minutes is done by people connected to yourselves, often at significant risk. So a big thanks to us, and a big thanks to Terry and his team, because I think without the introductions, the sort of common purpose we had at the conferences, we wouldn't have got to know Richard and the others. So a big thanks for that introduction. We're going to try and cover off as much as I can in the next sort of 20-ish minutes, with a little bit of Q&A wrapped up at the end. I won't go through all of these, they're on the screen, you can see what I'm going to talk about. There's some stuff you'll like, some stuff you won't like. But to start off, I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about MIB and what we do. I think the important thing to be mindful of is that we are essentially the fund of last resort. When there's nobody else there, we will pick the bits up. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a while. But we've been around quite a long time. 1946, the Uninsured Drivers Agreement was brought about, and then a little bit later, I think 1969 was it, the Untraced Drivers Agreement. So we're there to compensate victims of uninsured and untraced driving when there's nobody else there to help. It costs an awful lot of money, so those of you that drive vehicles, £53 on average of your policy gets top sliced off UK 140 odd insurance companies and comes to pay to operate MIB, but predominantly most of that is to pay claims. £370 million a year in claims that connect with uninsured and untraced driving, so it's a hell of a lot of cash. We manage something called the Motor Insurance Database, so when your colleagues are at roadside and involved in checking anything to do with PNC and insurance information, that comes through from the Motor Insurance Database. And then those of you that are familiar with police ANPR systems, any ANPR activation is a slightly different database of, rather than insured vehicles, which the MID is, it's a database that has some clever trickery go on that gives you the number of uninsured vehicles, and that's what gives the ANPR pings for police, which then in turn leads to the recoveries that your teams manage. Significant amount of vehicle recoveries that I've already spoken about, but I think quite frighteningly, 29,000 claims a year, 500 claims a week land with us through the post, mainly now via our website, so 500. What I describe as victims, they're all victims of uninsured and untraced driving that are rattling through our doors week in, week out. But I think it's important also to say we are not an insurance company, so if you've got any really challenging insurance questions, I'll try and answer them, but I don't represent the industry, we're slightly different from that. So how bad is the problem then? We're seeing a lot of challenges with those that use their vehicles for business. Vehicles are insured, but they haven't got the right business insurance for it, so the driver itself is uninsured, about 3 million of those at any given point. And then some statistics I won't go through significantly, but 80% of seized vehicles are driven by individuals that have a relationship with crime. And I think when we saw the Met slides of some of the weapons that have been recovered, that really is systemic of some of the stuff that goes on. So, you know, our message to policing generally is, you know, by carrying on to seize these vehicles, you're taking dangerous vehicles, dangerous uninsured and non-compliant vehicles off the road, but you're taking dangerous people off the road as well. So MIB compensation works in weird and wonderful ways, but essentially we are the fund of last resort. So essentially, if there is an insurance policy in place with an individual, with a company, that is an earlier resort than the MIB fund, because we are that fund of last resort. So predominantly that will apply quite a bit to yourselves. You might have certain losses that aren't insured that we can support, but predominantly where we kick in is where there is third-party insurance in connection with vehicles. So if I've got a third-party only, not a comprehensive policy, then the Road Traffic Act does not legislate for paying out anything than a third-party liability. It won't pay mine, but the MIB will kick in and support there. And the predominance of our claims that come through us every day of the week are in connection with cyclists, pedestrian, other losses that in themselves are not insured. And as you can imagine, at £370 million a year, that equates to quite a lot of compensation and support for people. There is also the ability, which is good news, to claim in relation to what we describe as loss of no claims and excess. That is a claimable thing that people can claim for, and it's not that well known either. We're really fortunate to have committed police officers to support us, and in turn your teams kick in and support them. Without you, we'd be really stuck, because we have 134,000 extra vehicles out there that are potential causes of uninsured victims, really. And some of those successes equate on the left hand of the slide there. You'll see the types of vehicles that are seized quite frequently, from really high value Lamborghinis to ice cream vans. The Met have had an issue with e-scooters, as of the rest of the country, pedicabs, sort of tuk-tuk type thing you see driving around. There are all sorts of things that fit into the class of motor vehicles that go around that are uninsured, that police are seizing on a frequent basis. And the slide on the right there is a Northamptonshire road safety operation, where they actually take a transporter out with them on occasions, because they get quite a few sort of off the M1 and some of their arterial roads there. So some, I think, are the supporting factors that lead to some of those massive seizures. That is a graph of your policy costs at the moment. So it's really good news, although you don't feel it. It feels quite expensive, doesn't it, car insurance and other insurance you have to pay for. It's coming down slightly. Average policy cost is in the region of about £450 at the moment, but that's average, so it depends on age, occupation, driving history, and that all-important postcode where you live or where you operate from. The insurance industry is a big money maker. £18 billion a year, so it's a huge money flow through the industry. In order to sell insurance in the UK, you have to be a member of MIB. So we've got some, mostly UK insurers, but we've got some in the Crown dependencies and some actually in Europe as well that sell insurance, but they're still members of the MIB. Some of you may have seen this on YouTube, but it's a bit of fun to look at, but I think it makes a wider point about what goes on out there with insurance fraud.
What the hell? What the hell, you idiot! Oh my god! Oh my god! What the hell is he doing?
Just point into the camera there. And surprise. But just while that's paying, folks, the more serious note about this is it's £400 million a year it costs the industry. We always say to people, in order to establish that a vehicle is insured, three things. Is there a contract of insurance for the person, for the purpose for which that vehicle is being used? And this is some of the training that we go through with police vehicle recovery units from counters, and also road policing officers and general policing as well. And this will link itself into the work that you in turn perform at roadside, where they're establishing under the Road Traffic Act and under the law whether a vehicle actually is insured to be driven on the road or not, and then subsequently whether that vehicle can be seated